Well, welcome to the 700 Club. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is fighting for his political life. Israel's Attorney General is planning to indict him on charges of bribery and breach of trust. And today, Netanyahu is fighting back.
The charges coming as Netanyahu faces a tough election in April. As CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell reports, the Prime Minister says his political enemies are trying to drive him from office.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu went on national TV to defend himself.
The left is doing this because they know they can't beat us at the ballot box. They simply can't beat us at the ballot box. For 3 years, they have been carrying out a political pursuit against us, an unprecedented hunting expedition with one goal: to topple the right-wing government led by me, and to bring to power the leftist party of Lapid and Gantz.
Netanyahu said the left put enormous pressure on Israel's Attorney General to influence the elections and felt confident he'd be vindicated.
I tell you, the citizens of Israel, this house of cards will collapse. I am absolutely certain of that. I am certain of it 4,000%. I plan on serving you and the state as prime minister for many years.
Netanyahu's main challenger, retired General Benny Gantz, said Netanyahu had to go.
People of Israel, tonight, with the publication of the recommendation of the Attorney General, and in the circumstances this has happened, sitting with Benjamin Netanyahu in the same government is off the table. I call on you, Benjamin Netanyahu, from here tonight, to come to your senses, show responsibility, and resign from your post.
Israel's Attorney General Avichai Mandelblit announced he would indict Netanyahu in 3 ongoing investigations. In the most serious case, Netanyahu is suspected of firing Israel's communications ministry director in exchange for favorable coverage in one of Israel's top news sites.
We are entering uncharted waters. An incumbent prime minister was never indicted in Israel's history as he was still serving as prime minister. From a legal perspective, nothing will change in the immediate term before the decision on the indictment is final. Once the decision is final, there's legal ambiguity on whether the prime minister can remain in office or not.
The indictments also threaten Netanyahu's political future. The current polls are so close that even if Netanyahu's Likud party lost a few seats, it could turn the tide of the upcoming elections. The elections will be held on April 9th. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
We all await the results of the election, but this is definitely a bombshell. Underlying it, here are the 2 major charges. One is that there were 2 or 3 favorable articles put out by a news organization in return for Netanyahu sacking the communications minister. That's supposedly the most serious. And Netanyahu said, in the avalanche of all the negative press by the same organization, you're going to accuse me of somehow buying 2 to 3 favorable articles. That's one of the charges. The other is influencing for a friend who happened to be a political contributor and pointing out, having the finance minister point out that there's a tax advantage transaction that he could do that was legal under Israeli law. Those are the 2 major charges, and so we'll see how the Israeli electorate responds to it. But this has been a tactic to try to take out elected officials through litigation. It happened in the U.S. with Tom DeLay. He actually was convicted. The conviction was overturned by a circuit court, but by then it was too late. DeLay was out of office and out of power. So we'll see what happens here. The election is just around the corner, and we'll see how the Israeli people respond. Well, President Trump says walking out on Kim Jong-un was a necessary step in a long journey towards a lasting peace. And while critics may call the Hanoi summit a failure, Trump says negotiations will continue and that his relationship with the North Korean dictator remains strong. Gary Lane has more.
Despite the abrupt end to the Hanoi summit, President Trump is optimistic about eventually reaching a deal with North Korea. Thursday night, he told Fox's Sean Hannity that relations with Kim Jong-un remain friendly.
We get along really well. He's a different kind of a guy, and I just said, look, this isn't going to be working. So I have a feeling something down the line will happen, and it'll happen. It'll be good.
CBN Asia correspondent Lucille Toulousan was in Hanoi for the summit. On CBN's Global Lane program, she reported that lower-level negotiations with North Korea will continue.
A relationship between North Korea and the United States is building up. It's developing. And as Secretary Pompeo also said, they know each other better. The teams from, both parts, North Korea and the United States, they know their limitations. They understand one another, and hopefully they will work together.
Foundation for Defense of Democracy's Vice President Jonathan Schanzer says building a lasting relationship with North Korea is a matter of developing trust and verification.
If you look at the history of our dealings with North Korea, it's like the old Peanuts cartoon. It's Lucy and the football, right, where she holds the football and Charlie Brown comes up to kick the field goal and falls right on his back.
A history of North Korea deceiving the West. Agreement is reached to halt testing. Western sanctions are lifted. Eventually, North Korea resumes nuclear development and missile launches. In Hanoi, Kim wanted sanctions lifted without destroying all his missiles and nuclear development facilities. Like Ronald Reagan, who walked out of the Reykjavik summit with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev in 1986, Trump said no.
Whether it's Reagan, whether it's anybody, you have to be prepared to walk, and this just wouldn't have been good for our country.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
Certainly a developing story. In my lifetime, I never thought we'd reestablish relationships with Vietnam, but we have. The stakes are really high here. If North Korea can leave their nuclear weapons aside, it brings a whole lot of stability to a very dangerous part of the world. So he's playing a very high-stakes game. Keep this in mind, no other sitting president wanted to ever sit down with them on the basis that you could never trust the other side, and you could never get to a deal, and it would be bad politically. So Trump's taking it on, and he's playing a very high-stakes game.